So President Reagan went on national television and said that our evidence was intercepted communications from the Libyan government.
Unfortunately, one of the side effects of President Reagan's speech to the nation about the bombing was that we lost our access to the Libyan traffic that we had been listening to with such regularity for many years.
The most recent example of an administration deciding that the benefits of exposing secret intercepts were worth the cost was Secretary of State Colin Powell's February 2003 speech at the UN.
I can almost guarantee you that Saddam Hussein got on the phone to his commanders and said, you know, I will shoot the next person who, you know, talks about sensitive matters over an open telephone.
The need to protect signals intelligence sources is one reason the NSA and its partners are secretive. But that secrecy has also bred suspicion, particularly because so much of Echelon's information comes from commercial satellite communications, communications that people assume are private.
It happens all the time, where innocent people do end up, their conversations do end up on an analyst's desk at NSA.
Could some of those innocent people be Americans? Today's technology, including supercomputers and satellite communications, has enabled Echelon to become a spy superpower with what many believe are frightening capabilities.
The entire world, the whole planet, covers everything. Echelon covers everything that's radiated worldwide at any given instant.
Mike Frost spent 20 years as a spy for CSE, the Canadian counterpart to the NSA. He is the only high-ranking former intelligence agent to speak publicly about the Echelon program.
Everything is looked at. The entire tape is looked at. And the computer sorts out what it is told to sort out, be it, say, by keywords such as bomb or terrorist or blow up.
But is it possible that an innocent conversation between two ordinary people could wind up on the desk of an NSA analyst?
Not only possible, not only probable, but factual. While I was at CSE, a classic example, a lady had been to a school play the night before, and her son was in the school play, and she thought he did a lousy job. Next morning, she was talking on the telephone to her friend, and she said to her friend something like this, "Oh, Danny really bombed last night." Just like that. The computer spit that conversation out. The analyst, erring on the side of caution, he listed that lady and her phone number in the database as a possible terrorist.
One of the obvious dangers of an agency as powerful as the National Security Agency is that you can abuse that power, and the NSA in the past did in fact spy on Americans. They were caught.
The agency recorded conversations of civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King in the 60s. Among the NSA targets in the 70s were anti-war activists Jane Fonda and Dr. Benjamin Spock.
And it became an enormous scandal.
Congress held hearings in the mid-70s.
And they set about to try to set in place measures to curtail this type of wanton surveillance of American citizens exercising their First Amendment rights.
In 1978, Congress passed the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
From then on, NSA was required to go to get a warrant if they want to eavesdrop on a U.S. citizen. But what they did was they established a very secret court in order for them to get the warrant.
The restrictions of American law are two primarily. One is whatever it is we do must have a foreign intelligence purpose. And secondly, even in pursuing this foreign intelligence purpose, the law requires us to do everything reasonable to prevent us from touching communications to, from, or about Americans.
Admittedly, this has become more difficult with the explosion of telecommunications.
I won't deny that the way the world communicates now, there is the potential all the time of bumping into American communications. To say that we do that intentionally would be absolutely wrong. We try to safeguard against it in every step of the process.
The NSA is required to delete all references to unauthorized American eavesdropping in reports to their customers, who include include the FBI, CIA, and the White House.
If we're collecting against a person who believed to be a foreign target and turns out to be an American person, that is someone who is protected by the Fourth Amendment, we have to stop. I mean, turn it off. That is no longer a legitimate target.
I have every reason to believe that NSA has not spied on Americans since 1975. Part of the reason is with the world's telecommunications systems growing so rapidly, NSA doesn't have the resources to spy on its targets overseas, much less devote any resources to spying on Americans.
While the law is clear-cut about domestic eavesdropping, outside the United States, where the NSA and its English-speaking allies share information through Echelon, the rules are not so clear-cut. Wayne Madsen is a former Navy lieutenant who had been assigned to the NSA.
Anybody who's an international personage, a celebrity, a politician who's involved in any sort of matter where the U.S. either supports it or is opposed to it can reasonably expect that the ears of the NSA will be listening in, because this information, of course, is fed to our political leaders in the United States to help formulate policy.
But even Madsen was surprised to find evidence that one particular international peace negotiator and private citizen was subject to the NSA's eavesdropping vacuum cleaner.
We have this memo from NSA that says, look, President Carter is engaged in a private peace mission in Bosnia and Herzegovina back during that whole Civil War situation. It reemphasizes that President Carter is not an official envoy of the United States. And I think the most bothersome aspect of that is if a former president of the United States cannot be assured of privacy, who can?
While the NSA shares information with its Echelon partners, Hayden says, they never use or abuse the relationship to get around the law.
By executive order, it is illegal for us to ask others to do what we cannot do ourselves, and we don't do it.
Former Canadian spy Mike Frost, however, says it happens all the time.
Sounds like the world of fiction. It's not. Not the world of fiction. That's the way it works. I've been there. I was trained by you guys.
He remembers one time Canada helped the UK.
But I do have first-hand experience where CSE did some dirty work for Margaret Thatcher when she was Prime Minister. The time, she had two ministers that she said, quote, they weren't on side, unquote. And she wanted to find out not what these ministers were saying, but what they were thinking. So, yes, we did intercept traffic from these two ministers. The British Parliament now have total deniability. They didn't do anything. They know nothing about it. Of course they didn't do anything. We did it for them.
One of the few people to acknowledge that they have listened to conversations on the Echelon system is Margaret Newsham, who worked at Menwith Hill in England back in 1979.
I walked into the office building and a friend said, come over here and listen to this thing. And he had headphones on, so I took the headphones and I listened to it. And I looked at him and I'm going, that's an American. And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, who is that? And he said it was Senator Strom Thurmond.
Porter Goss, chairman of the congressional committee that oversees the NSA, believes that overhearing a conversation is one thing, doing something about it is another.
It is certainly possible that somebody overheard me in a conversation. I have just been in Europe. I have been talking to people on a telephone and elsewhere, and it's very possible somebody could have heard me. But the question is, what do they do about it? I mean, I cannot stop the dust in the ether. It's there. But what I can make sure is that it's not abused, the capability is not abused, and that's what we do.
His committee launched an investigation into Echelon in the late 90s, when a number of newspaper articles appeared claiming that the vast spy system was invading people's privacy. At first, the NSA refused to cooperate.
One of the counsels of the NSA said, well, we don't think we need to share this information with the Oversight Committee. And we said, well, we're sorry about that. We do have the oversight, and you will share the information with us. And they did.
But only after Goss threatened to cut the NSA budget. Still, Goss's committee concluded the NSA was observing the law and filtering out unauthorized intercepts that came in through the Echelon spy system.
We do have